So this is the story all about how Travis Walton's life got twisted upside down. Alright guys, so hello friends. Welcome back. I've been doing a lot of like gaming videos, but I wanted to get more into like weird otherworldly UFO stuff. So I'm gonna tell you a really crazy alien abduction story. And it happened in like the 70s, and it sounds insane, but it's one of the most credible stories like ever told. And this guy's apparently very famous. I had not heard of him. I wasn't very like into like the alien like UFO abduction like scene until earlier this year. Christopher and I went to a festival that was in Roswell, and it was a UFO like convention type of thing. And this man was there talking and telling his story. His name's Travis Walton. And this story happened to him when he was maybe like I think 18. He was very young. But he's still telling this story to this day. Like, and it's been like 40 years since the abduction happened. It was very like intense. The guy was missing for like 5 days, and police got involved. It's a very weird story, and people are still like confused about it to this day. So I'm kind of like a skeptic. But this story is probably one of like the most interesting and like most famous UFO stories there are. So it kind of like intrigued me to look deeper into it and find out more. And like I said, I saw Travis Walton speak like a few months ago, so he's still alive and he's still telling this story. He wrote a book about it. Paramount later made a movie about it. It's called Fire in the Sky. It's actually like a pretty decent movie. There's like a really weird part of the movie where like syrup drips into his mouth and sends him into like diabetic shock, I think. I'm not really sure.
Travis? Honey? Travis? Travis? What's going on? Travis, what's wrong? Travis? Travis, are you okay? Travis, what's wrong? Travis? 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 Travis?
Like, you guys have to watch the movie. It's so good. Like, you have to. And he's still telling this story at UFO conferences around the country. I met him in Roswell earlier this year. He seemed very, very genuine. So I don't know. It's like crazy because it's not just like him saying he was abducted out of nowhere. Like there was multiple people with him, and then he was missing. All these people were like suspected of murder, like killing him and leaving him in the woods. So the police polygraphed everyone passed. And then he just ended up turning up a few days later and had a very detailed account of what happened to him. And to hear him talk about it in real life was very like strange, because I've seen a lot of videos online of people talking, you know, about like alien stuff that happened to them, or maybe even on TV. But I've never like met someone and talked to them and like personally like had an interaction with someone who had such a compelling story of abduction, I guess. So it was pretty interesting, and so now we'll just get into the actual story, like what happened to him. The Travis Walton incident. It was a sunny fall day in November 1975 in the Apache Sitgraves National Park. And so this national park is in Snowflake, Arizona. Travis Walton was 18 years old, and he was working with a 7-man timber standing improvement crew on Turkey Springs tree thinning contract. So that was the name of his like company I would imagine that he worked for on the contract that he was working for. So he was part of a 7-man crew, and basically they were like thinning trees and removing like smaller, weaker trees, so like the bigger trees could grow and get stronger and bigger for more timber. But so you can kind of like think of them as like forest workers or loggers, like lumberjacks out there, because just imagine them as big, strong, burly men just swinging their axes all day. I don't know. Anyways, so there were 7 of them, and their boss was 28-year-old Mike Rogers. He's the oldest person with them and the oldest person on the crew. He's the boss. It's just weird to imagine, like, a group of guys that were just out, like, working all day long, like 10, 12-hour days in the woods. Just seems like, I don't know, crazy. Things are just different now. I feel like us millennials, like, I'm wearing a giraffe onesie right now. I feel like millennials just kind of, like, have, like, an extended adolescence. Anyways, so, Mike Rogers is the boss, and he's, like, always bidding on, like, jobs that they can do, and they all work together, like, usually a lot, and although they have, like, their own, like, personality, like, clashes and things going on, Travis Walton made it a point to specify that they all got along usually, especially at the end of the workday. So when that work bell whistles, they were all BFFs and driving home together. So he was part of the Travis Walton, who is the person this main story is about. He was working alongside Alan Dallas and John Goulet, and then working with them, but not necessarily like alongside of him, but just near, was Dwayne Smith, Kenneth Peterson, Steve Pierce, and they were all in charge of like binding and stacking lumber. So that was the name of all the men that were in the truck that day with the incident. And these guys are all like witnesses to this. Like they took polygraphs back in the day. I think a lot of them have like maintained their story throughout what has happened. But it's just crazy because they were with him when this happened, which I will get to what actually happened. But whenever he was abducted, they were with him, and it was so suspect that the police actually like suspected these guys of just doing something awful to him, and they actually had like a manhunt, but they had dogs there like sniffing for him. They were like expecting to find like his dead body somewhere or something. So they loaded up all their chainsaws and gas cans, and all 7 of them piled into their 65 pickup truck. Must have had double row seating. Rogers, Peterson, and Walton in the front, Dallas, Goulet, Smith, and Pierce in the back. So they're driving, and according to Walton, like, it's the end of the workday, so they were all super alert and excited, which, like, I kind of feel like both ways about it. I feel like if I was logging in the woods all day, I would literally, like, sleep on the way home, like, when I got off work. That's just me. But maybe, like, they were... On the other hand, though, I've worked jobs where I've been like, oh, I can't wait for the day to be over. I'm exhausted. And then at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, I'm off work. Super excited. So it's hard to say. And they were super young. I guess they were all very young. So... They got a lot of energy. So, this is the story, like, according to all of the men that were there. So, they're driving, and they're not even, like, on any roads or anything. They're on, like, logging roads, which are, like, dirt roads. And it's really funny because if you watch the movie from the 90s that was made, it's called Fire in the Sky, which you should definitely watch it because it's entertaining. But, Travis Walton spoke at this UFO festival I was at, and he talked about, like, what it was like. He was like, oh, none of us were drinking. None of us were doing anything crazy. But then the beginning of the movie Fire in the Sky is just, like, a pickup truck, like, driving out of control in the woods. So that's out of context, and that's not really, like, the whole story, but it's super funny. So... Like, they're 10 minutes into their drive after they pack up their chainsaws from the day. They're done binding and sawing and, I don't know, wood chucking out there in the woods. I don't know what they're up to out there. I can't even, like, imagine what that would be like. So they're 10 minutes into their drive, like, home, I would imagine, and they begin to see an orange light in the distance. So at first they're like, oh, maybe it's a forest fire. And they've helped put out forest fires in the past due to the remote location. So the closer they got to it, the more intrigued they were. They're like, is this a forest fire? What's going on? Like, are we going to have to jump into action and put this fire out? Like, let's do this, boys. So the closer they got, like, the more they were like, what the hell is this? Then where it takes a turn, okay? Because up until this point, you're like, okay, there's a bunch of loggers out in the woods, like manly men, you know, out in the woods doing their thing. And like they think they see a forest fire. So that's even still rational. You're like, oh, it could be a forest fire, whatever. This is where it gets nuts. All of these men said this. They encountered a saucer-shaped object hovering off the ground approximately 110 feet away, which is not even that far. Like 110 feet is like nothing, making a high-pitched buzzing noise. So it's just like, and like high pitch is that like, not like, okay, so making a high-pitched buzzing noise. So then Travis Walton, the guy who this story is about, now like thinking about it, when he told the story in person, I was like, he gets out of the truck. Travis Walton gets out of the truck. And when he was telling the story in person, I was like, why would this man get out of the truck? But like, he was 18, and I just feel like, and the like, I don't know if he said it in an interview or I heard one of his like friends say it, but Travis Walton really enjoyed a goof. So like maybe at first like he was just trying to like mess with everyone or whatever. But anyways, so yeah, they see a saucer-shaped object hovering over the ground 110 feet away, making a high-pitched buzz. He left the truck, Travis Walton left the truck with the other guys in it, and he approached the object. And his friends are like, hey, get back here, what are you doing? Da-da-da. You know, like, they don't want him to go out there. They're like, please, let's just leave. This is super weird, which, like, is very reasonable, you know? Because maybe if, like, one person saw it, it would seem like, maybe. But, like, they all saw the same thing. And they're all like, let's get out of here. Like, so yeah, so he left the truck and approached the object. And then all of a sudden, a blue beam of light struck out of this saucer-shaped object and struck Travis Walton. And his friends who were in the truck say that he dropped to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Like, they thought he was dead. They were like, oh, this flying saucer just killed our friends. Let's get the hell out of here. And then they like took off. They just left him, which like, I guess they got down the road a little bit and started to feel bad and had like a discussion about if they should go back and get him or not. And some of them did, but the rest of them did not, I guess. They would rather stay in the woods after seeing that, which like none of this, like this makes no sense. But so then, like, Walton's gone. This guy is just missing for days, and no one knows where he is. His friends are being questioned, like, and they lived in, like, a small town in the 70s, you know, like, I feel like Snowflake is, like, there's not a lot of, like, big towns in Arizona. So anyways, the other guys drove off. Travis Walton's gone. Within the 5 days, it's like no one knows where he is, and he doesn't know where he is, I would imagine. But then he just like pops up, and he's like at a payphone or something. He's like at a payphone at like a gas station or a restaurant. And in the movie he was naked, but I don't know if that's true. I don't think it was. Travis Walton in real life like kind of like explained away a lot of like the embarrassing things that happened in the movie, and I don't blame him. Because I don't think you have, like, creative control all the time over movies that get made about you. So that's perfectly fine. So Travis Walton was missing for these 5 days. And the only story, whenever he came back, like, he had a story that he stuck to that was very detailed. But it doesn't account for, like, 5 whole days. And it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But so he said that he woke up in a hospital-like room. And there were 3 bald, like, gray, you know, like how you'd expect an alien, like a bald, gray alien. And they were watching him. And so he ended up fighting them off with, like, a glass rod or cylinder. And then a human-looking alien, I assume, because he's on a spaceship. Like what else would this be? So he said like a human looking thing with like an astronaut's helmet on, essentially, came in and like ushered him into another, like led him into another room where there was 2 other human looking people. Just like a pause right here, because whenever he describes the alien creatures, he talks about how like hideous and grotesque they were and how they had eyes that like looked through him, and they were like big and dark, like their eyes were big and dark and looked through him. Then he starts talking about the human looking people, and he like describes, he's like, it's very weird because he's like, there was a woman, a human woman who looked like a woman. And then he starts to describe the men, and he's like, and the men were tall, bulging, bulbous, like had beautiful pecs that sparkled in the nighttime, and they're like bulbous gluteus muscles like tightened with pleasure when they saw me. Like he went into like very, very like detailed about what the men looked like, and then was just like, and the woman looked like a woman. So like it makes me wonder if there wasn't just like some kind of like weird like gay like orgy, like lumberjack orgy in the woods, which is like totally cool if that's what you want to do. But this is back in the 70s, so these guys, I imagine his friends being like, don't tell anyone, Travis Walton, tell them anything else you can think of, just tell them it. So he like comes back with like this story where he's like, I was abducted by aliens and the women looked like women. Like, anyways, these beautiful people, these beautiful men, statuesque, sexy men, take Travis Walton into this room, and they put a mask on him, I guess, and then I guess he passes out. So maybe he's like saying that that's what happened to him during those days, like he was like passed out and doesn't remember, or I don't know what the deal is, but he says he remembers nothing else except for waking up, walking along a highway, and the flying saucer was departing above him, like whoosh, like flying off into the distance. So I don't know, it's like, how did this guy go missing for 5 days? And it's not like people didn't look for him, you know, like they did a manhunt for him, and his friends went right from like losing him in the woods to the police station. Like they were so terrified. So it's not like they could have like taken him anywhere. Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense, like where else he would have been. And I mean, like sure, the alien thing seems like somewhat unlikely and like hard to believe really, but like where was this man? He was gone for 5 days. So he ended up writing a book about it in 1978 titled Fire in the Sky, and it's titled that because they thought it was a fire when they first pulled up. Like they thought it was a forest fire, so they weren't really that freaked out. So the book that Travis Walton wrote was later turned into a movie by Paramount. And and actually the area where this happened at was the second highest area, like the second highest frequency for lightning strikes is that area. And it's the second highest in the continental US. So I don't know about like the whole world, but as far as the continental United States, this area in Snowflake, Arizona had the highest concentration and frequency of lightning strikes. So, fun fact, the only one that's greater is the Everglades. But, so, that's kind of, like, relevant, too, because, at one point when Travis Walton was talking at the Roswell Festival, I actually had the thought, like, oh, well, maybe this man was just struck by lightning. And then he says that he thought he was struck by lightning, but that the saucer was like a conductor for the lightning to strike him. So I'm not really sure. He went on this game show in, I don't know when it was when he went on the game, probably like the 90s. That's when game shows were like popular. But it was the Moment of Truth, and they asked him, and he was gonna, if he told the truth, he was gonna get like $1 million, like $100,000 or something like that. Like, and so they asked him while he was connected to a polygraph test if he was actually abducted by an alien in 1975, which he replied yes. You know, like he's still upholding his story. And it came back that he was lying. And roll that beautiful bean footage.
Were you abducted by a UFO on November 5th, 1975?
Yes.
That answer is false.
Like, what the hell was that? You know, like, okay, so he passed a polygraph test in like the 70s, which, like, I don't even know like the science behind polygraph tests, you know, like they don't hold up in court, so what do they even mean, really? You know, like I've watched Mari a million times and they matter to those people, but like what does it mean as far as this guy? Because him and his friends passed the polygraph back in the 70s, and like in the 90s he's on this game show and it says it's a lie. But I mean, if it was said that he was telling the truth, they would have had to give him money. So, you know, like, who really knows what the truth is? I'm forever a skeptic, but really, what to believe? The truth is out there, my friends. Let me know what you think in the comments about the Travis Walton abduction. Like, was it real? Did it happen? What did happen with those sexy, sexy aliens? And also like other things that you'd like to talk about or for me to cover, like alien things, like otherworldly or like true crime kind of things. So yeah, so subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notifications, because we're gonna be streaming a lot. We're gonna be traveling and streaming from like some really cool places, so I think that'll be nice. Also, just a fact about the Travis Walton case, to this day all of the men who were involved still maintain the story that happened. So, like, usually if people are lying, I feel like they would break by now, you know? And after meeting Travis Walton and seeing him tell his story, like, it's obvious he's told it like a million times, and just, I feel like it happened. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Call me crazy, but I want to believe. Alright guys, so thanks for watching, and don't forget to stay weird, because the truth is out there.